Hi, I'm Tekurah McCullough, and I love live comedy. Woo!
I love that. I'm already excited because you gave yourself you in a an introductory sound effect kind of stuff.
It was awkward. I was like, who am I talking to? My
Okay,
patio.
okay. This comedy thing is particularly interesting to me because when we first bonded, we bonded over music, and
Yes.
then we had different fandoms. Like I was kind of into gaming already, but you weren't so much into that. And then you were
No.
into this comedy stuff in hockey, and I was not into these things. So you joined new fandoms that had nothing to do with me. So I think my first question is, when did you first start going to comedy shows and really getting into it?
Um, well, I always loved comedy. Like even when I was in, when I know, actually it started when I was in high school. Before I met you, actually. I loved watching. I think the show was called Comedy Tonight on in San Francisco Bay Area, where they would have like live comedians on, and I would go into my parents' bedroom and watch it on the old black and white TV, like turning the knob carefully, trying to get the right channel in, like comedians. And then there was the San Francisco comedy competition. What was it? Comedy. Oh man, I can't believe I got that wrong. Yeah, I think it was just a stand-up comedy competition. And I begged my parents to like, can we go see it? Because they would have like events, and Jake Johannsen was performing, and I loved Jake Johannsen. And my parents like said, okay, weirdo, we'll take you. So
They were like, you're way too into a comedian. We don't get it.
yeah, so my parents, being super awesome, like took me to the San Francisco comedy competition to see Jake Johannsen perform. I was probably like 15 or 16. Um, and also, I also listened to Live 105, which was, I guess, the Bay Area version of K Rock,
Uh-huh.
Um, and uh, and Alex Bennett, who hosted the Comedy Tonight show, was the morning host, and he was way into stand-up comedians, and stand-ups were always on in the morning. And I love David Feldman and Jake Johansson and Dana Gould, and all these comedians were on all the time, and I was just I don't know, I just got into it like as a teenager. And then I guess in college, I kind of stopped in college because I didn't have access. I didn't have the radio station. I was in a new place in LA. I didn't know anything, and I was in college. So like, what am I going to do? Go to the improv or something? At 18, I'm in Whittier, without a car. There was no way.
So it
So
was a money and a transportation access problem.
yeah, it was an access thing. And so I just like but I was still into like MST3K. So that was like my substitute. I was obsessed with like Mystery Science Theater and Red Dwarf. My sister would send me VHS tapes of Red Dwarf. She would like tape it for me. Are you familiar with Red Dwarf?
Okay, I have a strong opinion that everyone may not agree with, but I think some people do because I've talked to them. So
Okay.
the first season of Red Dwarf I watched for the very first time. I think I rented it from Netflix while my wife at the time was off to Washington D.C. doing training, and I made a
Uh-huh.
point of, I'm going to watch all this and I'm going to sit every day and just like binge watch Red Dwarf on DVD. And I watched that first season and it blew my mind, and then the jump to the second season was like, oh yeah, there's almost no connection. It's a brand new plot. And I'm like,
Yeah.
I don't like this at all. So I loved that first season, and then I completely got derailed by the second
You
season.
know what? It's been so long since I've watched it. I remember there is a difference between the seasons, but I don't remember exactly how they didn't they recast Kachansky. I remember they
They did. There was
recast
recast. Yes, they
Kachansky.
had to recast because I think I mean, and BBC is used to not using the same people constantly. It's a brand new story
Right.
or whatever. This vision we have here of comedy series, that comedy and drama series must have the same actors. Um, it's just way more. They'll just jump to a new plot line and that stuff much more often.
I see. Yeah, I don't that's funny. I don't really remember. I have to go back. And then when it came back, like after like we've been off the air for 15 years, but
Right.
we're back. And I'm like, no, that's okay, guys. I don't need to see like aged Rimmer. I don't need that. That's really weird. I'm older too. It's good. But yeah, so my obsession with comedy, always was always there. But yeah, I guess when we met, yeah, I was like really, well, of course I was into music. That was, I was into music and what else did you say? You mentioned hockey. That wasn't really until after I graduated.
Yeah, totally.
Um,
Yeah. But did you remember I used to be, my nerddom was gaming, and that was not, again, in our Venn diagram of interests.
I don't
That,
remember that.
see, that's what you just completely put it out of your head. Or I never talked about it. In the same way you never talked about comedy at the time, or it wasn't as big a deal. I guess
Yeah,
gaming in all our conversations wasn't a big deal.
yeah. But I was still like kind of mildly obsessed with comedy because I remember going out with friends with, when your friend had a car and you're like, woo, we're going to LA, woohoo. I remember going out with friends and it was a really confusing night. Like, I think this was the same night. I might have it confused. We were supposed to go to a rave, but my friend couldn't find it. Like we were just like driving around like random industrial neighborhoods or something. And then we ended up at some all night diner. I'm sure it's famous. I don't remember what it was. We ended up at some diner. And I remember just being sick of the people. I was just like, I was at my limit, my introvert limit. I didn't know it at the time, but I was just like, I'm sick of it. I hate everybody right now. I need to go for a walk. So I walked. Remember walking, and then I was like, ooh, this is kind of a creepy area. I shouldn't be out here by myself. I was like probably 19 or 20. And I was 19 probably. And I looked around and I was at the Comedy Store. I remember like realizing that's the Comedy Store. The famous.
Yeah,
There
like
was
you
no.
would, and you're like, I know that place because I've literally seen it on intros to things.
Yeah, yeah. I was like, oh, this is famous. But then I remember thinking, this is creepy. I think those are sex workers over there. I don't feel comfortable. I'm going to go back to the diner. And so I was like, I'm going to go. This was bad. But it wasn't the sex workers that made me feel uncomfortable. I just want to make that clear. It was just like I was already feeling something about the neighborhood was creepy. And it wasn't until years later that I learned about the history of the Comedy Store and how somebody like committed suicide, like jumping off the building. And I was like, I'd like tapped. That's like the only like paranormal thing that I even believe in is that somehow I had tapped into the bad energy
Yeah.
of the Comedy Store. And I was like, nah, I'm out. I think it's the Comedy Store. I hope I'm not slandering the wrong comedy club.
So
I think
was
it's
this, is Comedy Store in Los Angeles proper?
you know what? Tekurah should not be doing this podcast.
Oh God, don't worry. You know what? This is the thing where in the write-up I do, I'll be like, I figured out where the Comedy Store was. I was just gonna say
Okay.
Los Angeles is a city. Some cities are, New York has a reputation for, hey, it's the city that never sleeps. Los Angeles is a city that dies a quick death at 6:00 p.m. The whole place empties out and people flee to the suburban communities. And yes, there's
Which is so.
yeah, there is some nightlife there, but it's easy. You might be right next to a concert venue, but if you walk a block in any direction, it's going to
Oh
be
yeah.
dead silence.
That's true. Yeah. So I think that was, yeah. No, it was in LA proper. It might be Hollywood actually.
Okay.
God, I'm really vague because I don't live like in LA, so I don't have to go into LA. So my knowledge of LA neighborhoods is really bad for somebody that's lived here for 10 years. So, because I live in Pasadena, I can just stay in Pasadena. So, like, I still get Silver Lake and Echo Park confused. So I'm useless. Ooh, local jokes for local.
Let's make now we can make all kinds of comments because I was just in the San Gabriel Valley where I grew up, so we can make all kinds of. That's one of my favorite things about Crazy Ex-Girlfriend is the fact that the entire theme song is built around the fact that she's going to West Covina, even though they don't really film in West Covina, they film kind of near West Covina. But I always yes.
Okay, here's my secret shame. My obsession with comedy also came to fruition when I started taking classes at the Upright Citizens Brigade, LA, UCB. Something I took all the improv classes. So I'm a genius, is what I'm saying. I'm telling you, I'm a genius. But I always wanted to take the musical improv class, right? And that class always sold out right away. I never got into it. As a result, anytime there's something music and comedy related, I don't watch it. I am bitter. I never watched Crazy Ex-Girlfriend because I'm like, that's what I want to do. Nope. I would just sit there jealous the whole time. I wouldn't enjoy it.
Oh my God.
So
okay. you're making me feel better because I have that reaction to things. There are things that are sort of in my wheelhouse, but I wanted to do this, but I never did. Either I was too busy or I was afraid to do it, and then, yeah, it can kind of
Yeah.
poison this little pocket of something you like. Yeah.
Right. So yeah, so musical improv, like my friend Julia, like made me go see there's a group, I think is it Maybe Wants Candy? I think that's what they do. They do musical improv. And I was like, you realize, Julia, this is the first time I've gone to see this group because I never wanted to see it because I always wanted to do it.
Yep.
And it was fun. I did enjoy it. I wasn't bitter the whole time, but still, yeah, there's just that pit in my stomach. And I'm like, that should be me. I should be up there. I could do that. I could do that. Which is so selfish. It's so rude.
I know, but it's that just things we get little knots of poison stuck in us, and it's like I don't want to be. I think of it. Everybody can think of it any way they want, but I think of it like you got an infection at some point, and you got some pus stuck in a pocket somewhere in your body, and honestly, now after the fact, it's going to be painful to go in and try to pop it or do anything with it, so you just avoid it. That's what happens to me. Because you're going to have to get rid of it. You'd have to do some work. You'd have to give up.
Yeah.
You had a dream for this thing, and now you're going to have to work through the fact that you didn't do it. Or do you want to do it now, or do you want to let it go? Like, oh no, letting go.
Yes. Yes, you are totally right. There's nothing stopping me from signing up now.
Yes.
Nothing stopping me from taking that class now, but somehow I've decided that window has closed.
I completely relate. Yeah.
That's so sad. But I'm trying to trace back. I like this idea of moving chronologically through my obsession with live comedy. But I think fueled by crushes. Because I did
want to ask that. So when you mentioned that you kind of had this thing for that guy,
for Jake Johannsen,
was it kind of comedy mixed in with puberty?
Yeah, definitely. But I think that's just something that I have, and I think it's a stereotypical woman thing, which is also like the stereotype of why dudes get upset when they take their girlfriends to a comedy club and they get mad because like if somebody makes me laugh, I become attracted to them. If somebody's like consistently funny, that makes you more attractive. So I don't know. It sounds like chicken and the egg. I don't know what came first. I honestly don't know. But yeah, I was definitely obsessed with Jake Johannsen, who is still doing stuff, and I don't watch it. I don't watch. I'm sorry, Jake, but because I don't know. Again, I feel like I'm just going back. It would be like weird to go back to something that I was obsessed with when I was 15. Hence my podcast. What? Why? But I have a podcast exactly about old obsessions. But yeah, Jake Johannsen. Fortunately, he's still working. But I was in love with Jake Johannsen. I had a crush on David Feldman. Oh, the thing about the San Francisco radio show, morning show, is that they had like a quote unquote live audience. So a couple of times a year, me and my friends would, like, when we had like a school day off or something, we would like all get in somebody's car, drive up to San Francisco early in the morning, and like crowd into the studio for the Alex Bennett show.
Would they do that every day? Because that is
wow,
that's
day.
Totally different than almost no radio drive time thing does that.
Nobody does that. Yeah. And so like, you would like wait. I don't really remember. I know my friends probably remember this more than I do, but like you would have to like wait downstairs, and then they like buzzed up and then like go up the stairs, or maybe there's an elevator. I don't even remember. But and then it was like, it wasn't made for have live people. So there's a limit on how many people could be in there. And sometimes you'd end up standing the whole time, depending on how many people showed up that day.
Right.
It was super fun. I mean, that was my favorite thing to do. I loved, oh my gosh, Kids in the Hall. Totally obsessed with Kids in the Hall.
I lied, because we did talk about Kids in the Hall. That was a thing too.
Go.
We were hooked up on Kids in the Hall. Yeah, we were. We both loved Kids in the Hall in college.
I tried to talk my friends into going to see a taping of Kids in the Hall. They're like, you want to go where? I'm like, no, let's go. We can go to Canada. Were they in Toronto? It's like, let's go to Toronto and see a taping. And they're like, no, Tekurah, why would you want to do that? And I didn't understand why nobody else wanted to go to Toronto to see a taping of Kids in the Hall. Um, so it was TV stuff. And then I guess it was no, was it after I don't know, my chronology is a little bit off, but I think it was after college. When I moved back, I was forced to move back home, and
Yeah.
then I realized, hey, I can go to comedy clubs. And I'd done it a little bit before. I used to go to Rooster T. Feathers in Sunnyvale. What's up, Rooster T? They're still around. A friend and I went to see Carlos Alazraqui. I think that's one of the first comedians that I saw live. Jake Johannsen in San Francisco, and then I think my friend Dave and I went to see Carlos Alazraqui at Rooster T. Feathers. Do you know Carlos Alazraqui?
Wait, you keep calling. What is this? Tell me what this thing is called. First of all, just 2 points. One point is almost all the names you mentioned, I'm not gonna know. I heard Dana Gould. I'm like, oh, okay, now I know a name that was mentioned. Are you Rooster Teeth Feathers? Because there is a Rooster Teeth, which is no. I think they moved to Texas. That is a video game comedy thing.
No,
that is not what you're saying.
No, I'm saying Rooster.
Okay.
Initial T. Feathers.
Oh.
That was the name of the comedy. That's the name of the comedy club in Sunnyvale. Okay. Horrible name, but great club. Been there for ages. Still there. I love them. I will never not love Rooster T. Feathers for being a comedy club in Sunnyvale, California. So I don't have to drive up to San Francisco. You know what I mean? It's like, Thank God you're still around, because there's so many comedy clubs that died. There's that whole comedy boom, and so many are gone. But Rooster T. Feathers held on in Sunnyvale, and I still go there. When I go home, I will stop by Rooster T. Feathers. But Carlos Alazraqui was Rocco. He did the voice of Rocco for
Rocco's Modern Life. Yeah.
And he's also on Reno 911.
Ooh, who is he?
Shoot, I don't remember, because it's been a long time since I watched that show. Junior, I think. Isn't Junior one of the characters?
Maybe. So this is again on a if we were doing, this was a quote unquote real podcast, there'd be a man or a woman who's sitting next to us who looks this stuff up on the internet, and then we make them do things. Right.
Of course. Okay, so I think he's Junior. Anyway, so I remember seeing Carlos Alazraqui. And then so when I moved back home, I was like, oh, I can go to comedy clubs. I'm an adult. So I remember trying to see. I fell in love with Patton Oswalt and Blaine Capatch.
Okay.
They were doing like little interstitial things on Comedy Central. Like in between shows, they would do like little bits.
Yeah, totally. The stuff that like Comedy Central used to do, the stuff that Adult Swim is known for now, in weird interstitials.
Right.
Yeah, weird interstitials mixed in with commercials in the regular show.
And they got these 2 guys who would do it. One shorter guy, one taller guy. And like, this is like back in the days of like AOL, by the way. AOL was still going strong, listeners, at this time. And me and one other girl on AOL were just like, who are these guys? That tall one is hot. I love these guys. And then I would see Blaine Capatch, his name, in I would look at the TV, I would look in the listings. Oh, Brendan, you would open the newspaper. This is what you used to do.
Okay.
You go to the newspaper and you go to the weekend listings, and you would look under comedy, and you would scan for names that you know. You would scan the list of comedians that were going to be at the comedy clubs that week. Yes. And I would scan. I'd say Blaine Capatch. Like, all right, I got to go to, I can't remember the name of the club. Anyway, I got to drive up to San Francisco. Blaine Capatch is going to be there. I did that a couple of times, and Blaine was never there. I think it was the Punchline. That was the last one. And I was like, why? And back in the day, newspaper, they couldn't it cost a lot of money to say, oops, Blaine's not going to be there, everybody. If the listing was wrong, the listing was just wrong. You couldn't update it. So like a couple of times I'd drive up to the Punchline to see people. Janine Garofalo would be there, so it wasn't like a total bummer. I'd be like, oh, sweet, I got to see Janine Garofalo. That's good. But Blaine, am I talking too fast, by the way?
You're not talking too fast for me.
Okay. All right. Because when I get excited, I talk fast. Okay. So Blaine wasn't there again. and I asked, and I think I asked a waitress or something. I was like, why wasn't Blaine here? And she's like, oh, he moved to LA. He got a job writing for Mad TV. And I was like, I just moved back from LA. Because they had been doing that radio show. They had been doing the Alex Bennett show. They were in San Francisco when I was in LA doing that radio show that I used to go to. And so then we switcherooed and I missed them completely. And I was so mad. But then I started watching Mad TV just to see, like, I wonder what they wrote. What bit did they write, you know? So yeah, that was my sad going to comedy clubs.
What is
trying
it?
to catch.
Can I ask, you mentioned at the beginning, so you have fond feelings for the comedians that you first introduced yourself to or were introduced to in your high school years. And yes, and now you're like, sort of like, oh, I don't really follow them anymore. Is it like a music thing where there are bands I was super into? There's a time your music flower bursts open and you get into music a lot. And those things you loved maybe when you were 14 or 15, you kind of like them. Like I loved Mr. for like 3 years. It was I loved the albums were great. And like now it's just kind of dated. Have you grown away from them or above? Have you become a more connoisseur of comedy or just your tastes have changed?
No, my tastes have not changed. I am still as tacky as I was. No, I think I have good taste. Here's the fun thing. Last summer, I met Blaine Capatch. Like last summer, I met him and I was physically shaking. And like Blaine knows who I am now, which just blows my friggin' mind. But no, I still love the same people. Jake Johannsen's changed, but I mean that made sense. His comedy changed, but his comedy changed like after a few years after I saw him. It wasn't like he turned into like a completely different person like a few years ago or something. His comedy, changed as everybody's does. But he used to dress a lot goofier, and he's like, I'm just gonna dress like a normal person now. But I don't know. Some comedians I still follow, like Patton. It's not like I was like, fuck Patton, I still love Patton Oswalt. He was super nice to me. And that AOL friggin' thing, like he like checked in. He was like, hey ladies, what's up? We're like, Patton! I think like another writer on Mad TV like said, there are these girls obsessing about you. And then when he put me on the guest list for the Uncabaret. When I went down to LA to visit my friend Chris, we went to see him perform. He and Blaine perform at the Uncabaret, and I met Patton Oswalt. This is before he was Patton. This is pre-Ratatouille.
Right.
And I basically said nothing because this is when I was in my 20s and I was very bad at meeting people. And I would just sit there and look at you because like my brain would be doing so many things that nothing would come out of my mouth. So I did a piss poor job of meeting Patton. I was afraid to talk to Blaine, but Patton was really sweet and, talked to me. And then what did Chris and I do that next day? We went off to Detroit to see hockey. That's what that week was.
See the comedy and the hockey, right?
See some hockey
later, but okay.
Yeah. But no, yeah, I still, yeah, but I don't know. I think, maybe it's just Jake. Maybe it's just Jake Johannsen. I'm just like, I can't go back to my first comedy crush. I just can't.
Do you? It sounds like it's still tied into an intense passion. I feel like people, men and women who are into something, there's like an intense feeling you get, and it transcends normal, like, oh, I went to a movie and I liked it, or that restaurant's nice, or I enjoy this Merlot over that Merlot. It's not an obsession. It's just like it triggers something deeper, younger, more primal. We love it so much. There's something deeper, younger, more primal in us, and it's I can still hear that triggering, and I think about, and so does it feel like, is your experience now, does it still feel similar to feelings you had when you were younger, much younger?
No, you're right. It's different. You're right. I feel like maybe like part of me is like afraid to revisit that person. Like, what if I see Jake Johannsen and what if I feel the same way I did then? Like, what if I become re-obsessed? Or the flip side, what if I think he's not funny anymore? You know, like what if I'm horrified and disappointed? Yeah, there's a fear. I'm afraid. I am afraid to go back and listen to Jake.
Can I ask? It's interesting you said, what if I don't like his humor anymore? I want to ask you about something because I feel like there's something that's been happening in the past few years. It's always happened, but because comedians are always trying to push for things to be fun, all comedians don't think this way, but generally a lot of comedians, when they get together and talk about comedy, they're like, the only way to really be funny is you got to push over everybody's line. Wherever the line is, you have to go ahead and go over
right.
that. And that means they wind up saying things that are, even if they're not part of their political philosophy, they're not part of, but they're just like, it's funny. So then they say things that are sexually, racially, religiously, culturally inappropriate, or sometimes they say things that are really nasty, or they do things that are nasty. How have you, in your fandom, how do you navigate that when someone whose comedy you like either says something really bad or they do something bad and you don't agree with?
Well, I've been pretty fortunate. There's only been like a couple of comedians where I've had to say, you know what? I'm done with you. It's not been anyone that I really was like upset. Like none of my like number ones. Like I don't follow Louis C.K. anymore.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed him. I really enjoyed his shows, and I had no trouble saying, well, we're done. Didn't feel bad about that. But about comedy, it's interesting. There are some jokes, honestly, there are some things now that I thought were funny like 20 years ago that I'm like, yeah, I was wrong.
Me too.
That was
you.
not funny, and sorry that, it's hard. It's really hard because I feel like we're always changing. We're always developing new perspectives on things. So like I think about like Todd Glass. I used to follow him a lot. I used to listen to his podcast a lot. I've kind of fallen off the last few years, but he used to have a rape joke that he said was like the only funny rape joke. And I wonder if he still thinks it's okay. When you were asking me, I was like, oh, remember Todd Glass had that joke, and the joke, and I don't know, I feel like I should say it, but I don't want to mess it up, and you know what I mean?
Okay, you know what we'll do? Here's what we'll do. I'm sure he's recorded it somewhere. I'll put a link and say, here's Todd Glass's rape joke that he says is the only funny rape joke he can do.
Well, which he used to say. That's the thing. He used to say that. I don't know if he still says it now because I've kind of fallen off, following Todd Glass the past few years. But I know like about 5 years ago, yeah, that's what he would say. And, and I got it. And I was like, oh, okay, I understand why you think that. Did I ever really think it was funny? I don't know. Because I feel like some things are just I know this word gets overused, a trigger word. I feel like some things are so loaded that it's just best to avoid it. Like don't even, why do you have to have a rape joke? It's like, that's so loaded. It's unnecessary.
Okay, then I want to ask you about, there's somebody I really like, and I like him now more than I did 5 years ago, because I think he's changing, and I think he does weird things in the comedy space. What is your take on Dave Chappelle?
You know what? I have not watched his latest, the 8 minutes. What was that last thing he did? 8 minutes, 39 seconds?
Yeah.
I have not watched that, I must confess. I watched the first part of it. And then because I'm still kind of traumatized by recent events, I was like, you know what? I can't watch this right now.
Oh, yeah.
So.
And that's mostly, I watched it. That's mostly not, it's not really, there are moments of funny, but it's not funny. He's just speaking on this thing. But he'd have those two comedy specials, I think, that pushed the buttons over the past couple of years on Netflix.
Right. I did not watch them because I saw so many people complaining about it, and people that I liked complaining about it, that I was like, well, I don't want to watch it and be upset with Dave Chappelle. Yeah. So, and you know what? I'm really bad at watching people's comedy specials. Like I said at the beginning of this, live comedy is my thing. I'll do podcasts for a while, and then I will stop listening to your podcast. I apologize, everybody, but I have a very limited, like, I'll follow you, I'll listen for a few years, and then I will find something else to listen to. I don't know what it is about me, but I don't watch people's comedy specials. I don't listen to your comedy albums.
Okay, that's fascinating to me because I think I'm with comedy the way I am with music, which is I don't like going to live comedy shows. I don't like going to concerts. I listen to music all the time. I don't like going to concerts. I don't like the crowd energy. Almost never, only on rare occasions has the crowd energy improved. A Nine Inch Nails show, I went to an Oingo Boingo. There's probably 2 or 3 shows out of the 30 concerts, big concerts I went to, that it was better that I was there in person. It was really good.
Wow.
So tell me about how the live thing, when you watch the special or you listen to the comedy album, why being there in the moment with the comedian is just a different experience. How does it feel different to you?
I honestly think it's me and my attention span. If I'm watching something on TV, I'm going to wander off and start doing something else. I'm going to pick up my phone. I'm going to go, oh, I'm hungry. And then it's my attention span. And also, when I'm there, and also just being there, it is being a part of it. I mean, you are a part of the experience. It's always going to be different. There is that, that synergistic, that energy. I really do believe in that crowd energy. Like when you were talking about concerts, I was like, I can't imagine going to a concert and being like, I'm
a weird. I'm with you. No, I understand. Yeah, I totally.
I've not saying I haven't been to a bad concert or not enjoyed somebody's performance, but I'm trying to the last concert I think I went to was Franz Ferdinand, and I just love that feeling of adoration that comes from the crowd, when we're all like, yes, the song, I love that so much. And I also love the weird feeling in a comedy club when half the room likes that joke and the other half is not sure. I love that feeling.
Oh, that half laugh. You're right. I haven't been to that many comedy shows, but you're right. Even on the comedy specials, you can see the comedian is also when there's a 50-50 split, the comedian gets a little stoked. A bad comedian's freak. A good comedian is like, ooh, they just stood me on the razor. Right. How come you guys didn't like this joke?
Right. I love that. I love crowd work. I'm a sucker for crowd interaction. And I think maybe part of it is because I'm such an introvert. I save everything up, and then I just go out. I save it all. I save up my energy, go to a comedy club, and then just go home. I'm safe. I think maybe it's just a safe outlet where I could be a part of the crowd, but I don't have to put myself out there. I don't have to be vulnerable. I was going to
ask if you do you like being called on? Do you ever ask to be called on?
Here's the thing. I do not have a problem sitting in the front row of a comedy club. Here's why. Because as having performance experience, I know how much it sucks to have everybody sitting in the back. That sucks. As a performer, you want people in the front so you feel like you're actually talking to somebody. So as an audience, I feel like I have an obligation to fill in the front row. A lot of people are like, oh, I'll get picked on. I'm like, who you going to see? Don Rickles? Who are you going to see? Not that many comics are like, I'm going to just tear apart the front row. That doesn't happen very often. And when it does, unless you're going to see assholes, it's not going to be that bad. So I don't mind really being a part of it. But here's the thing. A lot of times being a large Black woman is very interesting. Large Black woman sitting by herself 90% of the time in the front row of a comedy show. Um, there are some comedians who will avoid me like the plague. They're just like, oh, this this is not going to go well. I'm going to make some mistake and the audience is going to hate me. And then there are other comics who are like, oh, no, I need to point out this woman, but nobody's been an asshole though. Nobody's been a jerk.
Have you ever heckled or heard heckling and you're like, this comedian deserved it? This dude's this person's off the rails.
Oh, no,
Never.
no, never. I did have tickets to a comedy festival once, and you had to buy it in a package, and it was Dennis Miller was part of my package.
Mm-hmm.
And this is post 9/11, Dennis Miller. And I was like, well, I'm going to go. I have the ticket. And I went, and I was like, But now I could have heckled. Instead, I kind of said to myself, I think I said this out loud. I said, I got to go. And I got up and I walked out. If somebody had heckled, I don't know. I really, really hated some of the things that Dennis Miller was saying. And I just left.
Was this his post 9/11? I mean, did he go on sort of a patriotism rant in comedy? Okay.
He was.
I do remember
he was starting to say stuff about being American, and I don't know. I was like, okay, here we go. I'm good. And I left. I don't know. Here's the thing. No, you should not heckle. You can express your discontent by leaving.
Yeah.
By maybe letting the booker, know that you didn't care for that person.
Yes.
But by heckling, you're never going to win, because that person is on stage and has a microphone. What are you accomplishing?
Yes, I completely agree.
You're going to just piss off if that person has fans in the audience, you're just pissing off the fan. I mean, unless maybe now I'm trying to think unless.
So I'm wondering, most of the heckling we see, so the ones that they'll show videos, or when you're there and someone's heckling, it's either they're allowed when they have 3 beers, they're a loudmouth, and so they're yelling too much.
Mm-hmm.
They're having a good night and they're just mouthy, and so they're babbling almost nonsense, and the comedian just kind of works it in. Very seldom does somebody actually they're trying to make either a funny or a reasoned argument with that comedian about something.
Right. And I don't think I've ever seen that. And I'm trying to think, what situation? What would a comedian have to say for me to stand up and say, you are bullshit? Yes. They would have to say something really awful for me to stand up and be like, you're full of shit. I don't know, maybe if they say all lives matter, no, I'd probably just walk out. You know what? I can't think. I'm just a non-confrontational person, I guess. But, I remember I went to see Joe Rogan a few years ago. He was here in Pasadena at the Ice House.
Yeah.
And, I knew that Joe Rogan had said and done some things that I didn't agree with. I never listened to his podcast, but I was like, oh, Joe Rogan from News Radio,
Yeah, exactly.
Fond memories of Joe Rogan. And I went, that was the most uncomfortable I've been in a long time. And I've been to open mics. No, that was one of the more uncomfortable ones, because some of his jokes, I was like, yeah, Joe Rogan, haha, that's funny. And then some of the things, I was just sitting there my mouth as a straight line, that's not funny. No, you're wrong. This whole premise is flawed. I don't, it was weird. It was like, ha ha ha, oh no, oh ha ha ha, no. It was weird. It was a weird up and down. So, but I didn't feel the need to, I couldn't heckle. Your premise is flawed, it doesn't.
Yes.
There's nothing you can do. Yeah.
Well, I'd say that's part of the difference. When you had people who have characters, and so they go up and do these characters, but then it's a show they put on about this character. Now, as you have the bleed over, you had it in the very beginning where you had a comedian who was on the radio every day. That means whatever that comedian's, you can't be on you can't talk every day on a podcast or a radio show. and then have it just be your persona. It's going to be you at some point. And
Yeah.
that's when whatever darkness or your own problems come out. And that's why I think it's like you mentioned Kids in the Hall, like they were always this weird mix of like Monty Python were mean and nasty sometimes, and Kids in the Hall, like it was that same absurdity, but I don't know. It always seemed like the joke was either on them or it was never nasty. So as you said, like I don't go see jerks or assholes doing comedy. I know they're assholes. I know they're an asshole before I show up. I'm not going to pay tickets to go see that. There's some people who seem like you seem like a decent person, and I have so many hours under the belt listening to you talk, blow shit out your mouth. I think you're probably my kind of people.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you know, and I feel like a lot of the hecklers, maybe, I mean, not the drunken ones, but like the ones that maybe have a problem, are those the people that just go, hey, let's go to a comedy club tonight? Did they not know who they were going to see?
Right.
You know, maybe they're those people who are just like, let's just go and see what happens. And it's like, oh no, this person likes Obama. What the, you know? Yeah, you got to know who you're going to see. I think that might be a part of it. Oh boy, open mics. I mentioned open mics, and yeah, I in my effort to support local comedy, I've been to some open mics, and I saw the worst comedy. And I've been to like multiple open mics. I don't know why this one open mic just went so bad that the host like came out and like just like went off on this dude. He's like, I told you not to do that joke. You did it anyway.
Holy crap.
Do not come back here. Do not bring that shit here. It was amazing. It was an amazing night. It was so bad. He had like terrible, flawed premise jokes about trans people, about spousal abuse. I mean, it was it was amazing. It's like, wow.
That is so I think that's interesting. You said a false premise. I mean, there was somebody, just a non-comedian, who posted something in sarcasm on LinkedIn today. I was going to comment. It was so complicated to have to explain, but I think the issue, she's like, well, it's sarcasm is what she said to somebody who's like, I don't think this is true. She's like, oh, I was being sarcastic. And I'm like, but who is your voice? I don't understand the voice of who is the sarcastic person who is saying this, because none of it makes sense. So that false premise thing, that rings true. Like when comedians go off all the time, they're like, it's funny because it's true. It's funny because it's true. That's that false premise thing, right? Whatever you can write a joke involving transsexuals, there's ways, but if you know enough about these situations that the person's riffing and saying is funny, you're like, your first step in the joke is not true. So that's not true about transsexual people. So then now the whole joke's not funny. And I'm like,
or transgender.
Yes.
He had a whole joke about sports. It was just terrible. It was about having trans women and that was like, no, that's not how it works. Like it was just it was just bad. I've like forgotten. I like went home and I like wrote about it in my journal. It was so bad.
It's funny because that you talk about trans, Dave Chappelle has his I guess so. One of the things he got railed on in the past couple of years for those stand-up specials is he had some stuff in there, especially about, if LeBron, again, it's the like, well, if LeBron James were playing in the WNBA, apples to apples, oranges to oranges, whatever. Yeah.
Is that what he did? Oh no.
Like,
I was avoiding it.
Yes.
That's not how it works.
But yeah. I've seen people talk about things. Again, there's comedians I don't agree with. And I'm like, oh, that joke is still funny. I understand your perspective. I understand the whole perspective. This is a difference of opinion. You're exploring one side of this. And I got you.
Exactly. Like Bill Burr. Like I'm not a huge fan of Bill Burr, but dang, Bill Burr is funny. And like, I can't be mad. You're like, no, that was funny. You got me,
He's nuanced too. I just watched his special, his 2019 special, and he heavily goes after all the people who bug him on one side, but at the same time, he goes railing at different times. He goes railing on people at both sides in a situation, and so you're like, all right, well, that's nuanced.
And it's funny.
Yeah.
you know. Um, yeah. Did you see the clip of Bill Burr talking to Joe Rogan about masks?
No, but now I'm gonna go on and get. I do. Wait, can I predict that Bill Burr thinks it's fine to make everybody wear a mask, and Joe Rogan thinks it's fascist? Oh.
Let's find out, audience.
Okay.
Yes, you are correct. Yeah, you
Okay,
are
I guess right.
correct.
So they should go listen to the. I'll put that in there. They should go listen to
Oh,
the
it's
thing.
so funny. It is so funny. Well, I don't. You know what? Actually, I don't. I don't know if Joe Rogan actually says anything, but
I
you get
noticed
the
that also. Joe
impression.
Rogan. He lets people, part of the criticism against him sometimes in his podcast is that he gets people on who have an interesting point of view, but they're wrong about a lot of things. But either Joe doesn't know,
Mm-hmm.
or he's not there to argue with all this. Yeah, I
Mm-hmm.
invited you on my show, so it's not my job to tell you you're wrong for the next 45 minutes. So he sits back and lets
But
people talk a lot of times. So
yeah, and it legitimizes some things that should not be legitimized, in my opinion.
yeah, like honestly, like
Um,
aliens. Like enough, Joe. We get it. We get it. You're into the macho MMA sports and you think they're aliens. Fine. Do I have really? This is why I can't listen to them anymore. There's too many fighters and there's too many alien people. I can't take it. I really can't.
I only hear it in lifts. I never listened.
I think it's what?
Okay,
Yeah.
we're spending too much time on people I don't enjoy. Let's talk about Jimmy Pardo. Let's talk about.
Pardo. Is he the announcer? Maybe no. I'm thinking.
No.
Never
Nope.
mind.
You're thinking of Don
Don't.
Pardo.
Pardo. Yeah.
Jimmy Pardo is the
Okay.
host of the long-running podcast Never Not Funny. Jimmy Pardo is the man who saved me from listening to Adam Carolla.
Yeah.
Because, I listened to Loveline. I enjoyed the Adam Carolla.
Me too.
And so I was like, oh, I want to continue listening to the Adam Carolla. And then I found myself getting into like the hugely depressed with the perspective of dating and men and women through the lens of Carolla and his fans.
Right.
And Jimmy Pardo was on the podcast. And I think I kind of knew who Jimmy Pardo was. Anyway, Jimmy Pardo was a guest. And I'd seen his comedy. And Adam Carolla started in on his whole guys who say their wives is their best friend, they're lying, blah, blah, blah. Jimmy Pardo, just straight face, is like, my wife is my best friend. What are you talking about? And the clouds parted, Brendan, and the lights shone down, and the angels sang, and I was like, what? Who is this funny man who thinks that his wife is his what? And I was like, all right, screw you Carolla people. I'm going to listen to this guy because it was the best. He was like, no, my wife is my best friend. I don't know what you're talking about. And yeah, and I've told Jimmy Pardo this story once many years ago that he saved my life because I was so depressed, Brendan. Just trying to figure out how to date, how to like interact with men in that misogynistic environment. Not saying that Adam Carolla himself necessarily is a misogynist, but I'm just saying his fandom is a misogynist environment.
So I would say Adam Carolla is somebody who locked in his views on things, and 20 years later, he believes the same things he did 20 years before. And so if you agree with those things, you're on par. If you don't, you don't. Compare that to Bill Burr, who says all kinds of things that can be regarded as misogynistic, anti-women, and sexist. But if you listen to him for more than 5 minutes, he's now going to say things on the other side about the fact, I love hearing him interact with his wife. When his wife wanders in, sometimes he's in a good mood, sometimes she's in a good mood, sometimes in a bad mood. They bark at each other. It entertains me. So he kind of does the version of, women are like this, men are like this. So he plays that off, and he always kind of laughs about it because it feels like everything he says, he knows it's not fully true. And so the laughing backs it up again. So
right.
the people who stand on those gender stereotypes and they plant both feet and decide with a sword and shield they're going to fight for that gender stereotype, like, dude, that's a tedious position to be in.
Yeah, and it seriously bummed me out. Like, I was like, how So in order, so I honestly, I came away, and and I can't put it all on other people. I bought into it, and that's on me.
Yeah.
And I found my way out of it. But I was convinced for a few years that the only way to find happiness was for me to look perfect. You know,
Yeah.
that was the only way. I just had to, what, you are flawed and you have to fix it, and that's it. You have no chance.
Because I feel like the standard line from Corolla is, I mean, the old gender stereotype is men have their muscles and their handyman skills, and women have their looks. So that's how we find each other, and that's what all this is based on.
Right. And I was like, but I'm funny and I'm talented. That doesn't count. Oh, okay.
Right.
Okay. It was painful. It was really painful. And just to be like, no, your brain, that whole brain thing you've been working on for years, meh. Nobody cares about that, honey.
Exactly.
Oh, I feel like I'm just shitting on comedians now.
So this
I'm
is
sorry.
this is the path. Look, we can talk about people we love, and that comes up, but whenever you're discussing issues or you're talking about something real, my inclination, and I think everybody's inclination, it tends to slide into the negative. I mean, it happens with comedians, and it happens with when you're sitting around talking. Usually the things that bother you are the things that bubble up.
I feel like, yeah.
But now
I'm
you feel
sorry,
like
everybody.
you went too dark. Wait, I want to ask, I have another question to ask. I want to know what
Okay.
others think about your comedy stuff. So
What
positive
other
or negative.
what? I'm sorry.
What do other people think about your decades long involvement with with comedy scene, fandom, and comedy? Like people in your family, friends.
I've always been this way to my family, so they're just like, yeah, that's what Tekurah does,
Yeah.
My best friend's girlfriend like tells people I'm a comedian. And I'm like, no, stop doing that. Because I took those improv classes. She's like, oh, she's a comedian. I'm like, no, I'm not. I took classes. That's about it. I don't.
You probably got a certificate. I mean, and if you didn't get a certificate, honestly, we could just make one for you. I feel like you could just, yeah, okay.
But I mean, so many people took this class. It doesn't make me special. So many people take those classes.
She's
so many people taking improv classes. What?
She's proud of you. I think that's important.
Oh, that is nice. I don't know. It's not something I don't tell a lot of people. Like my coworkers, I don't talk about myself that much at work. So sometimes, when you're doing those icebreaker things at work, you're like, what is something people don't know about you? I can bust that out every once in a while. I remember once a coworker like mentioned John Mulaney, and I was like, what? Who? What? I was like all excited that somebody else knew a comedian, but I don't. That's just like I guess it's just part of who I am to my friends. They know that Tekurah has a crush on this comedian, and I spent the last year having a really bad crush on a comedian. It was bad. Really
what
bad.
do you want? Are you still in recovery, or can you tell us who it was?
I'm just over it. I'm not comfortable telling anybody who it is. Okay. My friends all know. I'm just over it now, but I've stopped. I'm so uncomfortable that I've stopped listening to the podcast that they're on. I'm 4 episodes behind on their podcast because I'm just, it's that like shame. I'm in that shame period now. Where it's like, and they probably don't even know. I mean, I have met this person, but they probably don't even know that I had a crush on them.
Right.
I was just that girl that kept showing up, but I feel like, oh no, what did I do? And they have no idea, but I feel like I've shamed myself somehow. So, what was I talking about? Now I'm sad. I made myself sad. I love comedy. I love comedy. I love comedians.
Yes.
They're awesome. Let's talk about female comedians. Let's talk about Laurie Kilmartin and Maria Bamford and Jackie Cation. Who make me so happy.
Oh my God, Maria Bamford. She's her comedy is insane, and her comedy is anarchist, which I like. It just doesn't make any sense in the most beautiful way.
she's a genius.
Yeah.
My friend bought me and some other people like tickets to her Zoom show last week. She did like a Zoom stand-up show, she and Jackie Cation, and it was a beautiful thing. It was so good. She makes me happy. For years, I will go through state. I will remember like people's my favorite joke. I know what my favorite Jimmy Pardo joke is. I know what you know what? I don't know what my favorite Patton Oswalt joke is anymore. I know what my favorite Blaine Capatch joke is. And Maria Bamford at Max Fun Con a few years ago had a joke that was so perfect it almost made me cry. And it was like I will not do it justice, but it was like comparing religion to, oh gosh, I'm not gonna do it right. Like comparing religion to like a starving child seeing like something like a McDonald's sign in the distance, just glowing. It was, but it was it was much better than what I just did. But it was so perfect. I'm like, yes, that is what religion is. We are sad people, and I laughed and cried, and it was profound. And I wish I didn't ruin it for people. But
what did you think about, so her TV show on Netflix? The best part about that is in any stand-up she does, she has different voices and different characters that come out. But I loved that because then you realized, oh shit, these things are almost like multiple personalities. Like these people are fully fleshed out in your head already when you say them.
These are real people. Yeah, like I have been listening to a podcast that she's on, and where she does a character, or it's like a character-based podcast. And then at the Zoom show, she started talking about a friend of hers from high school or from her hometown or something that she recently got in contact with. And then she went into The Voice, and I'm like, oh, that's that character you do.
Is it her rich? I'm in love with her rich white woman voice.
The deep voice.
You're right. It's the one that sounds like it's from a commercial from 1972. It's your standard stereotypical.
No, it's one of the higher.
Okay.
It's one of the higher pitched, almost hysterical voices. It's one of those, but it was so exciting. I was like, oh, this is a real person, and well, not a real person, but I see where this came from. It was so exciting. But here's another fun fact about me. I never watched her TV show because I'm all about the live comedy, baby. I did not watch a second of Lady Dynamite. Sorry.
Now let me ask: is it really a preference choice, or has it become a philosophical stance that you won't watch these things? Or is it really still like, when I try, I don't like them?
It's just like, I don't like it. I mean, okay. I can't make myself click it. Hey. I can't make my remote thumb won't select it. Like when I first got Netflix, I like loaded up my queue with all the stand-up specials, and they're still there. I haven't watched a single one. I have not watched one. I love Nicole Byer. I love John Mulaney. I haven't watched their specials. And comedy albums. Like I will buy your album. I will buy your album.
To support.
I will not listen to it. Yeah. I will not listen to it. I have purchased so many people's albums online. Do you buy things on Spotify? I don't know. CD Baby, whatever. I will buy your stuff, and then it'll just sit there on my computer, and I won't listen to it because I just can't. I need to be there. I need to be there. I need to be looking at your face. I need to be forced to pay attention to you, I guess is what it is, because it's my attention span.
The way you consume this media is the normal human way of consuming media. We only, since the time they started recording things on before vinyl, there was something before vinyl that they recorded stuff on. Before then, everyone who wanted to see something, hear something, experience something every city had to have its own orchestra, because if you don't hear the Ninth Symphony in your orchestra in your town, you're not going to hear it anywhere else. I mean, what are you going to do?
Right. Right.
Yours is the
Yeah.
authentic experience. We just have all this now, that all this recorded media now that's available to us at all times.
Yeah.
I think it's a different thing.
But you know what? I will listen to podcasts, though. That's the thing. That's where I will listen to podcasts. But again, for a limited amount of time. I'll get a few years and then I'm done.
And
But
the podcast is not it has almost nothing to do with the live show. They're two completely different.
you're right. You're right. Because it's always changing. It's always different. It's always changing.
Right.
It's, yeah. Yeah. So that is closer to the live. Yeah. See, I need change. Mix it up. Keep it going. I need novelty, which is so funny because I will watch the same Mystery Science Theater episode like 15,000 times, but I'm like, I need novelty.
I think there are, but do you agree there are bad MST3K episodes?
There are definitely bad jokes. There are things that don't age well.
Okay, but not the whole. You've never watched an entire one and been like, this one's really a dud.
No. Which ones do you think are bad?
Shoot, I don't. I've probably flushed them from my memory. I just remember some of them like hysterically laughing, and other times like after 20 or 30 minutes, I'm like, I don't know. So okay,
like maybe some of the early ones, because the pacing is really different. Like the first season ones from like right out of Minneapolis, there's not a lot of jokes in it, and that can get kind of boring.
Yeah. Oh, you're right. There's longer pauses where they're actually listening to the movie.
Yeah. What's really funny is, have you watched the revival, like the last two seasons? The revival is just joke machine. It is like not a moment of pause. It's just like joke. And it's like, you're just like exhausted. It's so funny. There's just nothing but jokes on the new seasons.
Because we don't need to end on the negative, because we talked about some problematic issues with comedy. Oh, sorry. You were going to talk about female comedians, and then I derailed you on to Maria Bamford.
It's okay. It is okay. I want to, people like to shit on female comedians. Janine Garofalo was an early hero of mine. Whoopi Goldberg was an even earlier hero of mine, although she's not considered a stand-up. She's more of a storyteller, but still, I don't care. Jackie and Laurie have a podcast, which I highly recommend, where they talk about comedy and stuff. But I remember one of them talking about how, like, when a woman comic comes on stage, the women in the audience like relax. And I didn't realize that was conscious. I did not consciously realize that, and it is true. I remember going to a stand-up show to see Gareth Reynolds, who was another stand-up comedian that I adore. It was at like some restaurant somewhere in LA. And there were a bunch of bro dudes came up to do some stand-up. And then Whitney Cummings walked into the room. And I'd never seen Whitney Cummings do stand-up. I knew who she was. I'd probably seen her like maybe on like TV or something.
Right.
But when she got on stage, my shoulders went down. And I was like, oh my gosh. I actually relaxed a little bit, because I'm like, oh, thank God, a woman. I didn't realize it until Jackie and Laurie pointed it out. Yeah, there is like a bit of tension as a woman watching a bunch of dudes go up and do comedy, because you're like, oh, what are they gonna, like, oh, what's this dude gonna say? When you don't know who they are, you're just waiting for the what Jackie calls the bitches man. You're just waiting for the the bitches man bit to come out. And then Whitney Cummings went up and just slayed the house. I was like, oh, this is why you had two sitcoms on TV at the same time. And people were going after you, but you're amazing. And it was amazing.
I was going to ask about, because you described that relaxation, and I was going to ask whether it was, is this a subconscious thing where there's just a different energy? But I know now that you've said it, and I haven't thought a ton about it, I get tired of this as a guy. Oh, there's a guy comedian. You're exactly right. Somewhere in that hour, he's going to talk about the difference between men and women, and how men are like this and women are like this. Stereotypes, like, they're just tiring. That's why, I mean, you mentioned the storyteller Whoopi Goldberg. Like, can we just talk about individual stories a little bit about who that person is? The stereotypes, I think that's where, first of all, that's the number one way people get into trouble, is not telling a story about individuals. So that's how people wind up in trouble. But it's exhausting, because, great, you're going to go into here's the litany of what you think is true about about groups of people, and if I don't agree, your joke's going to land flat.
Right. Yeah. Yes. Yes. Oh my gosh, you're so right. Specificity.
Yeah.
Yeah. When I took storytelling classes, I was like, oh, what a genius I am again. They talk about, and I think Janine Garofalo has mentioned this to other people mention. I think it's like a truism, but like when you add, and there's a better way of saying it. I don't know what it is, but like when you add those details, that's what makes the story universal. When you're adding something that you think only applies to you, somehow, when you're more specific, the specificity makes it universal. You
Oh,
make it more
interesting.
you make it more relatable, the more specific, not too specific, but like the more specific you are in telling a story. If you keep it super general, it's not, people can't relate to it. It's interesting. Like, I can't come up with an example, but it's there. Like when people are telling these stories, like Whoopi Goldberg doing the little girl. I remember. Do you remember her? I don't know if you ever saw the show, the one woman show she did that won her all the awards. I don't know if you ever saw it.
I
It's
think I
when
did watch it, but I think it's just such a long time ago. But
right.
I do remember her little.
The little
her
girl.
kid. I do remember.
Yeah, and the little girl with the towel and the hair, and I was just like, holy shit, that's me. And I know I know some gay men who did the same thing. Holy shit, that's me. And like, did Whoopi consciously say, I'm going to reach out to the gay men in the audience by doing this? Probably not. She's like, oh, this is, something that I've experienced and that's something that I did, and in being so specific with that little girl with the towel hair, she reached so many people,
Wow. Now I have to go back, and I'm going to have to go back and watch some of that.
Let's talk about representation in the arts. No, you want to wrap it up. I'm sorry.
No. So my last question is, okay, I had not thought about that. And first of all, I would not be sensitive as a generally idiotic person who's only in my own little bubble. We're not sensitive generally to what's happening with the other people in an audience. We're just sensitive to us and what's happening with us. So yeah, I hadn't thought about the fact that energy is different. I knew it's aggravating. It's tiring actually watching all these specials and seeing again when they're going to fall into the stereotype. So I'm really glad you talked about, because there is an energy difference when you know the person isn't going to lean on that. Yeah. Who has been really, you've mentioned some people you like. Are there people, and you just mentioned Whoopi Goldberg and Janine Garofalo, is there a comedian or a group of comedians that have been super important to you, not just because you thought they were funny, but because somehow they were deeply important to you, important to your soul, important to yourself? They changed you, or they gave you new vocabulary for living life you didn't have before? I know that's a tall one.
Wow. Yeah, definitely Whoopi Goldberg, because of, just seeing somebody that looked like me on HBO, and when I would go to hockey games in San Jose when I was, thinner, but I would have my braids in, and like people would ask, and I knew somebody that worked security, and she would tell me later, like, people asked if you were Whoopi Goldberg. Okay. I get facially there are similarities, but that woman is much older than me. Hurts my feelings a little bit. That spoke to me. I don't know. I feel like, oddly enough, Mark Maron was one of the first comedians that I heard talking about depression and mental illness. And that meant a lot to me. Before I heard Maria,
Yes.
It was Mark Maron. Me and my friend going to see Mark Maron in San Francisco. And I think I remember at one point he asked, like, who else in the audience is on meds? And me and my friend are like, what? It was like, and this is, like a while ago. This was like probably 20 years ago. And people, didn't talk about it.
Yeah.
And it was so stigmatized. I feel like, so I think Mark Maron meant a lot to me. Whoopi changed my vocab. It might be Mark Maron talking about mental illness, because that was really hard. It was still hard. It's still uncomfortable to talk about, depression and anxiety.
I mean, people. So now we have comedian. I mean, we have it as the subject and part of TV shows, and we have it with comedians. But there's something about a person who. I mean, Mark Maron still. it's not a gimmick. You can hear it. Like if you get depressed or you get down, you can just hear it. Mark Maron doing this podcast, it's not every episode, but sometimes he talks directly about it. But if you're prone to depression, doesn't matter how much medication you take, how much therapy you go to, you're always going to face this darkness sitting around. And sometimes it's really dark and sometimes it's a little dark, but it really helps when that specificity. I feel I'm going through this. I feel this. You feel this too. It's totally different than, hey man, depression, what a bummer. Let's talk about that in society. The people do that now where after there's a suicide, everybody wants to, the comedians that don't know anything about depression or don't deal with mental health issues, they want to sound off and they want to say they're supportive. And it's just never the same as somebody coming out.
Yeah. It's like Maria Bamford has a whole bit about it and about like the suicide hotline number. She's like, I know what the number is. I know. You don't have to tell me. I know it. It's not the problem. Which is so true. Problem isn't knowing the number. Oh boy.
Okay, well, this last thing, you talked way early. You talked early about like I've got a podcast, and I like your podcast, and I think you should do podcasts, and maybe that's your plan, or maybe. So tell everybody, where should people look for Tekurah on the interwebs and out and about? Where do you want people to look?
My podcast is the Monkeys Podcast, PAWCAST.com. And you can find me on Twitter and Instagram, Monkeys Podcast, everywhere. Spotify, Apple Podcasts, whatever. And that's the best way to reach me, where we talk about the Monkeys episodes and, the comedy within and what stands up and what does not stand up. And Brendan was on our last episode, which we're still working on getting out there. But
hey, what's the deal? You've made it incredibly hard. So Monkeys, MONKEES. Obviously, I'll put this in. But then explain to me, what's the inside joke? The logo is a hand with the 5 fingers with like little kind of finger puppets of the monkeys. Why is it PAWDCAST? What is the paw? Oh my God. Okay, I got you. Monkey's paw.
Got it. It's a monkey's paw, y'all.
Do you know that's now? Because I've known about this for a long time. And so, okay. All right, fine. I got it. Monkey's paw. Okay. I'm an idiot. I looked at it, I'm like, there must be something about the company, like the people who help her make it or whatever. I'm like, there must be some paw thing. Okay.
No, it's just the paw, monkey's paw. That's it. There's an episode too. There's a monkey's paw episode.
Is it actually about the monkey's paw? Like, making fishes?
Yes, Mickey gets a monkey's paw. Yeah, exactly. It's Mickey. It's great. It's your favorite.
I was completely wrong about all the monkeys, and now now I know which one is my favorite, and support him for my dying day. Yeah,
it's Mickey, and he was recently admitted to the the LA or the California California Musician Hall of Fame. I don't know. He was recently admitted to some regional Hall of Fame for music. I don't remember if it was California or LA, but Mickey Dolenz, underrated vocalist, y'all. Totally underrated. Such a great voice.
We'll go look for some Mickey Dolenz stuff too. Okay, well, I really appreciate your taking the time. This was really fun.
This was fun. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. And I close everything just explaining, this was Tekurah, and she knows a lot about comedy, and she loves live comedy shows.
Woo!